Hello, and welcome back to Great American Underdog, where you could hear real stories of strength and success from real life underdogs. Success isn't just about how hard you work, it's about who you surround yourself with. My guest today has spent decades building businesses, leading in the automotive industry, and studying what truly separates high achievers from the rest. His theory of five breaks down how the right mentors, relationships, and habits can transform your life. Today, we're diving into the lessons he's learned, the mindset shifts that changed everything, and how you can apply them to your own journey and find the right people in your life. It is my honor to welcome Chris Saraceno.
Well, it's my pleasure and my honor. I've been following you for years on social media. We've messaged each other many, many times. It's the first time we're really getting to have a full conversation. So it's my pleasure and my honor to be with you.
Thank you, Chris. And yeah, it's really cool, man. There's so many things from reading your book, Theory of Five, and the content that you produce is super inspiring to me. And there's a lot of parallels that we may get into today in my own life that you've already gone through, through your career and in your life that definitely have motivated and inspired me to take action, right? And then also to find the right people, which is really what Theory of Five is about, is finding those right people. And we're going to get into that today. But before we do, you've spent decades in the automotive industry. You've built some businesses. You've studied across the different verticals of life as a whole. But let's go back for a second. Like, who is Chris Saraceno before all this happened? Where'd you grow up? And tell me a little bit about you.
Well, born and raised in Allentown, Pennsylvania, in 1962. I'd say my whole life, my dad was a tremendously hard worker. My mother was a housewife. I have two brothers, an older brother, younger brother. My dad also sold wrestling mats with a local distributor. My whole family, we wrestled from second grade up through either high school or college, depending. It was my older brother or younger brother. And we had a wrestling room in our house. And it was our whole life, it was physical. We were all involved in some type of sport, but a lot of physical sports, wrestling, boxing, karate. We were involved in bodybuilding, weightlifting, powerlifting. So we weren't, I think that my mother, her point of view is my sons are not going to be tall. And I'm the giant in the family at 5'9". But she always believed that you got to be confident because you got to be able to take care of yourself physically. So that's sort of been through our whole mindset. So I'd say that was sort of a mindset we had growing up, is that, hey, you have to be tough mentally and physically.
Yeah. And to your point, it's not necessarily this, as they say, the size of the dog in the fight. It's the size of the fight inside the dog. So I'm sure growing up with your brothers and having your dad sell wrestling mats makes so much more sense now, knowing that you're a wrestler. And then I'm sure it sounds like there was a good amount of competition between you and your brothers, which ended up probably being a pretty healthy thing, right?
I was very fortunate. We didn't grow up a wealthy family, but you didn't know, because when I was younger, you weren't exposed to wealth. So you just grew up having fun. I lived in a great neighborhood with friends. We played sports all the time. And it was a very different world growing up in the 60s, 70s, and 80s than today, because everybody was outside all the time.
Yeah. My father used to always say, like, you're burning daylight. Like, get outside and play, especially in the summertime. If I was inside by any chance playing video games, he was like, get the hell outside. And he was a military guy. So if he said that, I was going outside,
Listen, Saturdays you got up, you made your bed, you cleaned, you helped around the house, and then you were sent outside and you didn't come back until dinner time.
I loved it. Chris, growing up, who were some of those most pivotal mentors? It sounds like your mom, your dad, potentially. Maybe there were some other people. And what was some of the best piece of advice they gave you early on?
Well, my mom, I will tell you, she was always focused on who you surrounded yourself with. I think most parents, especially a loving parent that's a caring parent, you clearly understand that, listen, the parents are going to have a lot of influence, but who they associate with outside of work or outside of the home life will influence. So that's why so many parents focus today and always of who you're surrounding with outside. And I think that's why we were so actively involved in sports growing up, and involved in activities and making sure we had the right people. My mother was very blunt. If she saw somebody was a bad egg, she was very strict in saying, no more. That person's not, you're not hanging out with that person anymore.
Right. Yeah. My dad would always say, if it looks like a duck and walks like a duck, it's probably a duck. And I don't necessarily always want you hanging out with ducks, depending on the
Well,
situation.
my mother-in-law and my wife's family would say, tell me who your friends are. I'll tell you who you are. My dad would use birds of a feather flock together. Tell me who you want to spend your time with. So we were very fortunate. And I would tell you that I was lucky that I had an innate curiosity to want to be around people. And I clearly understood. My wrestling coach told me in second grade, iron sharpens iron. And he explained that mindset. It was from the Bible, but he would say, listen, spend time with people that are better wrestlers than you. Spend time with people that are better in school than you are. Spend time with people that are better. We played chess a lot, so spend time focusing on that. So strategies of life. So that iron sharpens iron mindset, I think I had that really from second or third grade and understood I want to surround myself with people that excel in different areas of life. I didn't really have the theory of five mindset at that time, but I knew finding the right people made a difference.
Yeah. And you also had, it sounds like, that intense curiosity. Not everybody has that, I feel like. And sometimes, like getting around the right people, you don't have those lessons so early on. So between your natural innate curiosity and then also sounding like you had your wrestling coach, your parents, it was it was something that almost organically happened in your life to get around the right people because you were looking for the iron that would sharpen your iron. Is that accurate?
Well, my parents would say to me, you automatically just assume, which is sometimes not assuming is not good, that everybody wants to be your friend. And whoever you want to be your friend will become your friend. And I didn't realize that until later on that, wow, that was sort of a gift from God that I thought that way. If I saw somebody that I thought looked interesting, I had no problem going up and talking to them and telling them what I admired about them and becoming a friend with that person. So I don't know really if there's ever been a time that I've been rejected, a friendship in any way. And I think it's the approach that you have when you meet somebody. And I think that's part of the theory of five is that a lot of people are afraid to approach people. And I always look and say, what's the worst that can happen? Is they can say no. But if you just believe that, why would they not want to be your friend? Why would they not want to associate with you? And you tell them why you want to get to know them. Most people are very happy to be your friend or get to know you or share their success stories.
Yeah, and between, like, I'm sure you've read How to Win Friends and Influence People by Dale Carnegie. Like the best thing anybody could ever hear is their name. And the other thing too is you had this innate curiosity, and in business we talk about ABC. The old school way of thinking of that was always be closing, but Sandy and I talk about ABC, always be curious. And Jay Abraham, the great marketer, used to always say, if you want to be perceived as genuinely interesting, you got to be genuinely interested. And I think that a lot of people get so caught up in worrying about what they're going to say or how they're going to be perceived. And that kind of stops them in their tracks from ever having those conversations to find out what makes somebody else tick and being genuinely curious. So would you say that that was the piece of advice that you would give to the people who might be looking for their mentors or the right type of network along their journey, is to be curious?
Absolutely. I'm going to say, be curious. And, I would say I never pre-thought my approach, but I think the approach was that, that when I was younger, if I saw somebody do a move in wrestling that I liked, I'd have no problem walking up and saying, so walk me through what you did there. How did you do it? And what was the technique? That just followed along in sales, that's followed along in friendship, that's followed along in fitness or business. Just asking that question and letting them know what you admire about them and why you admire them, because everybody likes to hear their name and everybody likes to know specifically what you admired about that person or what you admire about them. So I think that background of asking about specific moves also transitioned into specific moves in chess when I played chess or specific moves in business or sales.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And a lot of that comes organic for somebody like you who's curious. So was there a light bulb moment for you, Chris, that made you realize, like, again, the success isn't necessarily just about how hard you work, although that's definitely a component of it, but really who you surrounded yourself with. Did you have an aha moment of, wow, when you said before to me, the theory of five wasn't something I understood yet? When did it click for you, really?
Well, I think I was 23 years old, and in my area in Pennsylvania, there's a big amusement park called Dorney Park. And there was a local gentleman that owned that at the time. His name was Robert Plar, and he was sort of like a local celebrity. Everybody knew him. Even when the pro wrestlers or football players or Arnold Schwarzenegger came to town, they would go to his house and work out. And he owned this park and a big, it was like a dance. It was the size of a football field, a dance place. People would go dance. They'd have fun. And somehow I befriended him because he knew I was a wrestler, and we start working out together. And I think at 23 is the first time that we talked about the theory of five. And I tell him, you came up with that name. He doesn't remember that, but I remember him saying, hey, Chris, let me just tell you something. And I remember him saying to me, when I first got married at 23 years old, he goes, you're young, but let me tell you something. And he was 10 or 12 years older than I was. He said, if I find out that you're still going out with your single friends, we won't be working out together. And he said, what happens is when you need to surround yourself now with married men, businessmen. He put down the rules of what you had to do. And he's the same guy that when we worked out, he listened to educational tapes the whole time and talked about things positive. So I would say that he might have been one of the first major influences, and then really put together when I started talking about the theory of five. So I started really teaching the theory of five when I was 29 years old, when I became a general manager of a Saturn store. I've been talking about it for years. And even when I had a presentation, if I would go to a conference and speak, I would talk about the theory of five my last 5 minutes until somebody, Susan Gibbons, who used to own Auto Success magazine, and I still write for them, she's the one that said that should be a book. And that was, I think, in 2000. I think that was 2016 or 17. She challenged me that should be a book. So it's something I talked about for years, but it was really my friend Robert Plar and my first real mentor that I would say that said to me, "Hey, here's what the theory of five is all about." And then we came up with the 5 categories of the theory of five after that.
Yeah, which really, in essence, is the 5 verticals of life. So, and before, I don't want to spoil it, can you break down the theory of five in the simplest way possible for the audience so they can understand?
Well, there's 2 areas of 5 that I use for it. One, you become the average of the 5 people you spend the most time with, and that's broken down in categories. Being that the first category is spirituality. The second category, we always look at it and say, listen, who you marry or who you're going to spend your life with, your life partner, whoever that is, that will be one of the most dramatic influences in your life of your success or failure. So choose that person wisely. And then third is if you have children, nieces, nephews, you can have all the spirituality in the world, you get a great marriage, but if your children are not doing well in life, if they cannot survive or thrive on their own you can never be complete as a parent. Then the fourth category is understanding business and finance, because if you can't support yourself and your family, it's tough to take care of people. It's tough to do the things that you love. It's tough to donate to the charities you want to donate to, or help people that need some support in that area, or give guidance. And last but not least is your health and fitness. And I know that you're very much into health and fitness yourself, but if you don't have your health and fitness, all the other categories make no sense. So I always look at it and say, you should find people in every one of those categories. And one of the things I talk about in the book is co-mentoring. So co-mentoring you might be excellent in health and fitness, but you might have somebody that's great in business and finance. And what you're doing is they're supporting you in business and finance. You're supporting them in health and fitness. So, and then you might have co-mentoring also where you're both great in health and fitness, but your iron sharpens iron. You're pushing each other to get better, and you both have that growth mindset.
Yeah, and that's the it's just two-way accountability at the core of that. Just being able to be there for each other in any of the whatever category it is. And how would you say that people measure what category to really, I want to say attack, but like go after and sharpen? Let's just say from the iron standpoint, like, how do you choose? Is it something that you see lacking, and how do you, I guess, recognize that?
Well, I think you have to understand yourself. I believe in my own case, I could speak about for myself. I knew um, that naturally health and fitness that was a natural for me. Another natural for me was parenting. I didn't have to have anyone focus and tell me you need to learn to be a better parent. I wanted to know who the best parents were, and I questions, questions, questions. Same with health and fitness, and the same with business and finance. Those were so natural for me to ask questions and try to find the best people. What wasn't natural for me was spirituality, but I knew it was important, and I knew it was important because I saw happy and prosperous people. That was a big part of their life. So I just had that curiosity to say, I know this is something I need, but it's not a natural for me. So I have to surround myself with people that are great in this area, which my buddy Bob Clark was, and other folks in my life have been very focused on spirituality. And I'll tell you what wasn't natural for me either was uh, being a great husband. Being monogamous was natural to me, but I would say being a sharing my inner thoughts, talking to them and seeking to understand. I actually had to use my business mindset and said, okay, what I'm learning in business to be a good coach and a good leader and a good partner, and that also applies to my marriage. So I said the monogamous part was always natural to me. What wasn't was speaking and talking and asking them questions and what's important to them in their life and why that's important. Uh, so I knew when I saw great husbands, I looked at it and said, I need to learn from that guy. I need to learn why their relationship is so good. How does he handle a situation when there's conflict so he could build chemistry? And I would just ask questions and questions and questions and tell him, I told men that were great husbands, I admire the relationship you have. How do you handle these situations? So I think it's just part of life, questions and being curious.
Yeah, and also something I want to touch on that you said is the self-awareness piece. Like, you have to be able to recognize like where you are in ratio to what's going on around you, your environment, the people. And then you also have to have a certain level of humility and be able to put your ego aside to say, hey, this is an area I can get better in, and actually go and seek out those people that are going to help you get better at that. And then you have to take what they tell you. And this is the biggest compliment you can give to any coach out there, is take what they tell you and then actually go apply it and create some kind of result. Something that you can take action actually on. It
Well,
sounds like,
you need that guideline where you can make that phone call and not feel that that's a weakness to say, hey, let me ask, can I run something by you? How would you handle this situation? I did a lot of that when I was younger. I did a lot of that when things didn't seem like it was going the way I wanted to go. And I would explain. And then you want people that are comfortable enough to challenge you and say, you're wrong. You don't want people that just agree with you all the time. You want people that care enough to confront you and say, you screwed up. You should have done this better, because the people that really care about you, they will challenge you. They will confront you.
yeah. And then it's up to you to put your ego aside and go and take their challenge.
Yeah.
And a lot of times I feel like people kind of struggle with that. And, how can someone, Chris, like, let's just say they have a certain amount of type of people around them in the 5 different categories, how do they audit, let's just say, their current circle to determine if who they're surrounding themselves with are actually the right people?
Well, I look at it and I say, when you leave after being around them, do you leave inspired or you leave drained? How do you leave when you're with them in most cases? I mean, you can't every time leave, oh, I'm super inspired. But if in most cases, when you spend time with that person, if you pick up your phone and you see them calling you and you're like, oh, I can't wait to talk to them, versus like, not now. The person you're going, not now, I can't deal with this. That's probably the person that's draining you. and you don't want to be around. And everybody watching this has somebody that you know that when they call you, you're like, "Ah, not now." Or when you're around them, you're like, how do I get out of here? How do how do I create my exit strategy? Because I know it's not going to go well. Well, when that happens, then you know that's the wrong person. But when you leave inspired and you're excited to see them and you feel like you're better because of that, that's when you know you got the right person there.
I love that. And then also, like, you know, you've said it too. I've heard you say it, and a lot of people, use this phrase: if you're the smartest in the room, you're in the wrong room. So, like, also, are you recognizing when you're walking into certain environments that the type of conversations that are being had are not in alignment with the true you and the true goals that you're actually trying to achieve? So, Theory of Five, I'm sure, expands on this a bit too.
Yes. Well, I would tell you that there's going to be some times that you are, depending on your leader position, you might be the best in a category, but you're never going to be the best in every category. And, part of the reason I start following you is I looked at it and said, he's young, he's hungry, and that iron sharpens iron mindset. I see too many men and women when they get older, they just look at the youth and say, what am I going to learn from them? But I look at the people that are, in their 20s and 30s. I'm like, I can learn from that. And you like that youthful energy and that excitement that you have. And I know some people don't like competition. Uh, I think competition is bad if you look at it and say, there's a winner and I want that person to lose. But when you look at it and say it's a win-win, how do I make this? How do we both win? How do I grow from this person? How could this person inspire me, but I can also support them? So that's the mindset. But competition is good depending how you look at it. If you look at it and say everything's going to be a win-win and we're going to learn from each other versus a win-lose.
Well, it's so funny, like, and you'll understand this phrase, Sandy and I say, everything's a car deal, like, to just kind of relate it to automotive in a way. Like, negotiation isn't a competition or a battle. It should be about creating a shared outcome, right? Like,
Yeah.
and I feel like that's the same kind of thing. People get, very shy and nervous about that. And, whether it's sports, negotiating, etc., like, healthy competition's good. There should be that iron sharpens iron with somebody who's pushing you to be better. Or if you have somebody who's, like, I'll take boxing, for example. I'm sure you've had this experience in wrestling. Somebody who's a better boxer than me, I'm not going to shy away from working with them because they're better. I want to go and learn from them and absorb all the little things I could be doing differently to get better. So,
well, the difference in every area of life, everybody wants a silver bullet, and there is no silver bullet. So if you take the 5 areas of the theory of 5, the difference is that you got to be this much better in everything you do in every single area of life. So, which means, let's just take, relationships or marriage. There isn't a silver bullet. It's just the little things that you do day in and day out, month in and month out, year in and year out, that all of a sudden create a wonderful marriage. And there isn't no one's going to say this is the one thing. And it's the same in the car business, and it's the same in fitness. It's just a bunch of little things and the daily disciplines that we do that all of a sudden, when you're in your, 30s, everybody, when you become 50, they're like, man, is he lucky? Boy, he's been lucky, but they didn't realize that for 20 years, you've been doing this. You get up a little earlier. It's the extra notes you take, the extra hello, the extra questions, the extra little things that you did that all of a sudden for 20 years, everybody thinks you're lucky, but they didn't realize all the little things you did every single day.
Yeah, and I tell people that with running, Chris. Like, last year I ran 1,000 miles, and they're like, how the heck did you do that? Well, I broke it down to 12 months, 83.3 miles a month. And then I said, how do I make sure I hit that target every month? And I had 2 months where I ran 12 miles and 13 miles. And then I had to readjust and remeasure. And I think that people don't realize the power of, like, just getting out there every day. And people are like, how do I start running? I said, just start. I don't care if you run, you go to the track and you run the straights and you walk the turns and you went around one time and left. If that's all you can do for the day, that's enough, because you put yourself in that situation to get better and then let that compound, to your point.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. It was funny. The other day you talked about the car business, and I had 2 of the young gentlemen. They were 21 years old, and I told them I started at 22. And I said, when I started, there really wasn't, you didn't have all these online trainers. There was only one guy that you heard of back in the early 80s, and a guy named Jackie B. Cooper. And I remember all I really did is I would sit outside the office of the most experienced people. And I would, after they were done, I'd make notes and say, so why did you say this? Why did you do that? And I sort of looked at everything like, okay, I like to play chess. I like to wrestle. There's techniques. There was a technique. But I remember saying to myself, you know what? I'm just going to treat everybody like my best friend or relative. And I remember my line to come to an agreement. I don't even like to say closing because I feel like closing implies that somebody won and somebody lost. So I would say, I want to come to an agreement. And I would just say to somebody, I would say, Ron, I know we just met each other today. I promised myself when I first started this business, I would treat everybody like my best friend. And if you were my best friend, you know what I would say to you right now? I would say, buy this car. And let me tell you why. I would do all the things up front, but it allowed me to feel comfortable to tell them to buy the car. Buy the car because we have one of the best technicians, Joe Paul, that worked on this car. Because you could tell who owned the car before. You'd say it was Dr. Smith that owned this car. Here's why he traded it in. You could go through all that, but you didn't have to come out with all these fancy lines. You just could talk from the heart and tell them to buy the car.
That's it. It's talking from the heart, right? And I think that applies, with even, implementing the theory of five into your life and looking at all the categories is like, if you actually approach it from the heart of like wanting to get better and you're looking for a mentor and they see that in you, they're going to more than likely invest the time into you. And to like the car point, like I used to always say, like, I'm not a car salesman. I'm a car coach. Like I used to always imagine that the person coming through the door was a family member. And how do I want to help them? Well, I want to help them get the best desired end result for them, whatever that means. And sometimes, Chris, that might mean you buy a car from me over the weekend. You might buy a car from me 6 months from now. You may never buy a car from me. But as long as you know that I'm here to genuinely help you achieve the desired end results you're looking for, and I can answer your questions, you look at me as a trusted advisor, and we can keep going forward. So again, like you have to genuinely want to do that for people, though.
And if they buy a car somewhere else, congratulate them.
Bingo.
Congratulate them and let them know, hey, if you have any questions, bring it in here. And there's nothing wrong with still calling them up and checking in on them. Hey, I just wanted to check on your car. If you need anything, bring it in for service. If they didn't do a walk around, bring it back in. I'll walk you through all the features that it has. Those are the little things that people, instead of getting bitter, you look at it and say, hey, help them out because they have other people in their household that are going to buy also. We forget about the little things and people just get upset about it. And I look at it and say, that just never made sense. I never considered myself in the car business. I really consider myself that I'm in business to support people in transportation and support other people growing in this great business.
Right. And that goes back to the mindset piece. Oftentimes, Chris, you hear people say like, well, your network is your net worth, right? And I feel like a lot of people hear that and then they try to get around people and their mindset is to just exchange business cards and get around people, but they miss the real opportunity to make an impact in those networking environments, right? Like they struggle to turn real relationships into opportunities. So, how do people actually apply the network is your net worth principle, in your opinion, in a way that drives success for everyone and, to your point, creates a shared outcome?
But here's a philosophy that I believe works best. Give, give, give. And when you're a taker, people know that. And when they know there's an ulterior motive, people sense that. But when people will realize that, hey, he's giving, 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 he cares, this is a real relationship. And if you are asking questions to get something, it's because you truly do admire them and you want to let them know. And most people are willing to do that. There's too many people that go into it with an ulterior motive saying, well, I'm going to go in there because I want to get to know this person because I could sell them something or I could take something from them. And if it's just taking knowledge so you could use it for your own benefit, that's usually the beginning of just an average or mediocre or less than good relationship. But if you really want people to have that bond, is when they see that, you know what, this person from the heart They're willing to help out. They have no ulterior motive other than building a relationship and growing from each other. That's just my philosophy, that I look at it and say, don't go into it and say, what can I get? Go into it, what can I give? Or what can we give to each other?
Yeah, and I think sometimes people get a little nervous, I think, on what to give. There's people that go into like some of these, business events and things like that. They're like, well, what do I give to somebody who I admire, let's say in the financial or business world, who seems to have it all? They have houses, cars, the financial success, etc. And there's somebody who's growing. Like, what do they give to somebody like yourself, Chris, if they want to interact and engage with you?
You know what? I'm looking at you and me. You know what you're giving to me? You're giving me the opportunity to talk about the theory of five. You're giving me the opportunity of your enthusiasm and your passion and your youth of wanting to grow. What does that do for me? It gives me inspiration to say, wow, there's young people out there that want to grow, that want to be excited. And it's motivating me to keep pushing myself. What do I get from a guy named Mr. Wolfington, who had half a car and created leasing this company? He's 92 years old. What do I get from him? Why do I had lunch with him a year ago? Because when I left, I said, wow, 92, this guy is still pushing himself. He's still growing. He's still starting new businesses. He's doing new things. What did I get from that? Inspiration of the way he's pushing himself, and he still gets up and works out every day. Works out mentally for his mind. He works out physically. He stretches out every day. So you're always, even when you're giving, you're getting. You're picking something up from somebody. The energy that you're getting from somebody.
Yeah, that's so true, and it's like an unspoken language in a way. So I love that, because I think that that's a real takeaway for the audience, is like, just have the energy and the genuine, authentic energy. Just be yourself and go into interactions like, not what can I get out of this, but really what can I give. Is so true. And Chris, you just finished your third book, The Daily Theory of Five. What's the difference with that compared to the Theory of Five in your other books?
All right, so I actually have all three. So the main theory of five, that really tells a story. That gives you, this is really the one that I looked at, and I interviewed people for 30, 40 years to find out people I admired that stood out, and it tells their story and what they do. It tells a little bit of my story, and it has interviews on the back. So it gives you really details of success and people that are happy and prosperous and what they did to create that happiness and prosperity in the 5 key areas. Then this workbook. This actually is a workbook that goes with this book that asks you detailed questions. This book gets you to think about the behaviors and actions and the thinking you need to do to implement the theory of five. And then the daily theory of five is something that I looked at and said, a lot of people don't really like to read a lot and sit down and go through a whole book. This is just every single day. It's little philosophies to challenge you, to challenge your thinking. And then at the very end, I have a little section that on every page it says of the year, every page of the year, it says iron sharpens iron. And it asks you a question to get you to think about behaviors, actions, attitudes that you will do in one of these categories on it. So those are the 3 different books, and they're all 3 different mindsets that they have. But I will tell you that I went through this book myself, and I filled it out as a participant, and all of a sudden I'm like, wow, these are really challenging questions I put together here. So when I ended up putting the book out, I said, I'm going to go through it and read the book and answer the questions just like it wasn't my book. And I realized, wow, it gets you to think, and then you start challenging yourself. Yeah, I'm the author of the book. Am I living this? Because in reality, life is that you take 2 steps forward and 1 step back. Sometimes you take 2 steps forward and 3 steps back. But as long as you keep moving and you realize that you went backwards, that's sort of life in general. Life isn't perfect, and you're going to have challenges. And how you get through some of those challenges is just realizing that, you know what? We've all won the biggest lottery of life. The chance of our mom and dad meeting each other on this planet and you becoming a unique genetic you is trillions to 1. And the fact that you and I got up today, and when you hit a certain age, you see tragedies and things happen. you sort of just look at it and say, like I've told my daughters many times, and my children, hey, I'm 63 years old. If something happens, I have lived a great life. I've lived a great life. And I think every day you sort of look at it, and when you get that stress and you feel a little panic, because we all get that, is to just take a deep breath and realize, you know what? I'm walking around today. I got up today. I feel relatively good with no pain. I'm pretty fortunate. This too shall pass, because that's going to happen. You're going to have tragedies in your life.
Yeah, and just like wow, the mindset piece of I write in a journal every morning. Literally for the last 3 months, I started doing this. I was never a journaler, right? But one of the prompts in there is just like writing about what you're grateful for. I had kept a gratitude journal in the past where I would write in it randomly here and there, but to do it every day. And one of the things I just write down every day is just my health and my body. Like just like you said, to be able to get up and just get up in the morning. Like the little things that people take for granted at times. And then just realizing that like I think there's no accidents, right? Like for you and I to get on this call and your mom and dad to get together to have you, my mom and dad to get together, down the line and have me. And then now we're sitting here talking about things that can actually empower and inspire people. I feel like there's no accidents in those things. And really it's just putting yourself, those daily habits that put yourself in those opportunities to have an impact, while we're on this planet.
Yeah, I'm saying, and one of the things I say a lot. Hey, listen, don't make it about me. Make it about we. This is a together thing. And yeah, did I think that way when I was in my 30s? Not quite as much. I felt like I always had a supportive. I wanted to go to when I went to college. I ended up going there for business and finance and marketing. But I really originally went my first year to be a wrestling coach because I enjoyed coaching people. So this was a natural to me. And even though I've been in the auto industry, it'll be 41 years, July 5th of this year. I really never considered myself. I'm just in a business where you get to support and help people.
Yeah, amen to that, man. What would you say, Chris? Like, what's the biggest difference you feel between, people that are high achievers, and then the average person? Like, in terms of structuring their day, like, what's the biggest difference between those two people?
Well, I mean, like I'm looking at this here. I still use a day timer where I write everything in. I put things in my phone. I also have my Alexa that every morning it reminds me of certain things to do. So I am constantly reminding myself of things I need to do. It could be conversations. It could be daily disciplines. But I try to write down as much as I possibly could and plan my day out. Now, I call it flexible rigidity, which means that if something happens that's urgent and important, if it doesn't happen that day, I just move it to the next day. Years ago, I used to get stressed and have such an agenda and I realized, you know what, you can't plan it out. Just move it to the next day and do it. So I say that you have that flexible rigidity, that this is the plan, but you could say that's sort of like in life. If it's not happening this today, doesn't happen this week or this month, you figure it out, work it out. And I also believe that I don't know why I have done this, but since I'm 12 years old, I have written down my yearly goals every year since I'm 12 years old. And I haven't had anyone teach me that. It just happened naturally that I wrote things down, even as far as like, when I was working out, how big my arm was going to be, how much weight am I going to lift? I mean, I was very, very specific of what I
I'm gonna
wanted.
bench 315 for 5 reps. Like,
Yeah.
I love it. Would you say, Chris, that that's like the one daily habit that had the most underrated impact on your success, or is there something else that
I would say other people underrate it, but I would tell you that for me, if someone says to you, what has been a key, I would say getting up early. In most cases, I find myself that not quite as early as I was when I was in my 20s. I was getting up at 4:30 to work out. Now it's 6 or 6:30 that I'm getting up to work out. But I would say getting up early and being active and working out. And my workouts, I realized you got to have some reality. You know, I realized they changed between time I hit my 30s, 40s, 50s, and 60s. So I had to alter my workouts just to make sure that I wasn't getting injured. And yeah, some people don't want to admit it, but you got to change, and you're not quite, in most cases, some people are, they're not as physically strong as they were, and they get injured, and your joints can't handle it, and your ligaments can't handle the stuff that you were doing when you were younger. And you just have to look at it and say, how do I work around it? I still want to be physically fit, but I would say that by far, um, I'm a believer that you have to be confident in yourself. You have to feel what makes you feel good. Some people, it could be the money in their bank. I know an important thing for me is feeling physically fit. And that helps my confidence if I do that. I also have been that, something so small. I know if I don't get a haircut every 3 to 4 weeks, I, I I know that I got to get that haircut. There's certain things that I feel like you got to look good, you got to feel good, and that just sets your whole day.
Yeah, and all of those things, I think, like you said, they combine to create our reality, right? Like, because again, if you're not feeling confident in yourself, your reality is going to reflect that. Your interactions are going to reflect that. And I've heard you mention before, Chris, like I believe things happen for us, not to us. And I feel like a lot of things that have happened for you are a result of the person you are, and your habits, right? And that confidence that you feel. So, like, how does reframing, I guess, obstacles in this way, how does that help people approach challenges? Like, where, I believe that things happen for us, not to us.
Well, I would tell you, like, I'll give you an example, something that, years ago, I didn't look at it and maybe made me a little bitter. And sometimes if you stay bitter, you don't get better. I was a little mouthy. I wasn't a yeller or screamer, but I was a debater when I was younger, especially with my mother. And she had a very, very strong, dominant personality. Yeah, she's in charge. And finally, one day at 20 years old, she said, "You're out." And just put all my stuff in the front yard and said, "Find a place to live." And I had to finish college on my own, and I ended up living in a trailer. And I was me and my pit bull Pepper, and I remember having a mattress, and I remember feeling a little sorry for myself. But I realized that when she said, "You're never going to make it on your own," I thought to myself, there's no way I'm going back. And I believe that moment, that day that happened, I think that just changed my life for a good way. Because what happened is I had to figure out how to make it. You know, I, I had to make a decision and say, how are we going to make it? How am I going to live day to day, and still go to college, still do the things I want to do. And, so a lot of people look at that as a negative, but I would tell you that as I got older, I realized, you know what? She was right. I probably should have just kept my mouth shut half the time. I couldn't help myself, that I would just speak up too much. And I knew her personality, and I looked at it and say it was my fault. I should have just focused and said yes a lot of times. But it made me stronger, and it made me want to work hard, and it made me say, I'm going to make it happen. And I felt like one of my superpowers was I could outwork most people. And and I looked at it and say, I'll figure this out. I'll make it happen. So I mean, that's just one area. And a lot of people will give up and want to be bitter. I look at I that's one of the things I admire most about my mom, that she said, get out. I don't need this anymore.
Yeah, she was willing to do that, in that moment, knowing it was going to be something that was
Well, you have
best.
too many parents today, like kids do anything they want.
Yeah, and the other thing too is like so many people, whether younger or older, have this victim mindset, like things happen to them, right? And all these outside external circumstances and the government, the economy, and all these things like bog them down so much that they never go after what they really truly wanted in life. And I feel like whenever I get, and it's part of the reason I started the podcast, Chris, is like being able to shift people's mindsets of being like, hey, you are in control if you choose to. You can decide to start taking those daily habits that are going to improve your life. You can decide to start going and finding the people in the key areas of your life that are going to improve it. And I think that people need to recognize that a little bit more, that they have more control than they realize. And sometimes life's going to test you and make you step up to the plate, like you had that situation to do so.
Well, I would tell you, not that I want to get political, but I have uh, a cousin that is, constantly is posting something negative, political, and is, over the top. There's over the top, being that you're a Democrat or Republican. And I remember having a conversation one time when they wanted to challenge my thinking, and I said, "Listen, I really don't want to talk about it because in my mind, I don't care who the president is. I'm going to have a good life no matter what. I'm going to figure out how to have a good life. And no president is going to determine my success or failure." I said, "I don't care who it is. I don't care what you believe." So I know that we don't want a political program, but I think you have to believe that. If you believe that somebody, that your mayor, your senator, your governor, your president is going to determine your personal success or failure or your happiness or how grateful you are about life, I mean, I just don't get it. I mean, I just look at it and say, I just don't understand it, because figure out how to have a great life no matter who. And whoever's controlling the country or your city, as long as we have the freedom to move where we want to go and work where we want to work, and we get up every day, okay, we should be pretty grateful.
Yeah, and again, it starts with that. It starts with that gratitude. There it is again, Chris. Like where it just comes up of like, I think that people aren't recognizing all the great things that are sometimes around them,
Yeah.
and then it's so easy to get drawn into the negative. People go on social media, etc.
Into the victim mentality.
It is. So for those people, like, how can someone practice self-auditing their thoughts, like, so that way they can be the observer of their thoughts rather than, let's say, like the reactor?
Well, in the theory of five, I talk about, we call it the point of view chart. And in the point of view chart, I look at it and say, for every event in life that you have, you're typically, it's going to go through your onboard computer, which is your mind. And you're going to ask yourself, and it's going to be based on your history, based on what's happened in your life. You're going to ask yourself either positive questions or negative questions. And if you ask yourself a negative question, the only thing your mind could come up with is negative answers. So if I say to myself, what don't I like about my job? Why can't I sell cars? You're going to come up with, well, I don't like the advertising. I don't like my boss. I don't like the inventory. I don't like the location. I don't like the manufacturer. All this stuff. Or, I mean, you could do the same thing about your marriage. You could ask what you don't like. And that's the beginning of being average or below average in your thinking. Or you could focus on, what will I do today? That's a positive question. And if you can only come up with positive answers. And here's what happens. There are some people that have a negative question, but they have enough emotional intelligence to realize that's thinking. And if I keep thinking this way, my behaviors are going to be bad behaviors that are going to give me negative results. If you don't have enough emotional intelligence and you still think like a child and you're a victim, then you're going to have behaviors that give you poor results. But if you have enough emotional intelligence, or you're naturally a person that challenges yourself, or surround yourself with somebody that says, Saraceno, come on, you're better than that. Thinking like that, that's not even like you. I can't be more disappointed that you're thinking this way. Then all of a sudden you are comfortable enough to say, you know what, you're right. And you start focusing on what you can do versus what you can't do. And I think too many people out there, I find the people that have an average life are not happy or don't have a prosperous life. They focus on what they don't have. They focus on what they can't do versus what they can do. And there's so many things that we can do to have a happy life. We really have great opportunities because no one's telling us where we have to work, where we have to live, what we have to eat. In most cases, we have choices. And if you believe that you're a victim, you are a victim. If you believe that you're a victor, then you will be, and you will focus. But the questions we ask ourselves, consciously or subconsciously, will determine our thinking, our behaviors, and our results.
Yeah, no question about it. It's like, your self-fulfilling prophecy.
Quality questions. I always say that. Quality questions. Ask yourself quality, positive questions to get you to think.
Yeah. And, you've also mentioned before, like, no one's ever going to be as happy for your success as you are.
Yeah.
What do you hope people get out of that quote?
Well, I mean, I was told that years ago by Mr. Kelly, who was 90 years old and was a great mentor. And I was very fortunate at 28 years old. I was one of the youngest general managers at 29 in the Kelly Automotive Group. And he would give me words of wisdom. That was one of his comments to me. He said, listen, Chris, I want to tell you something. You're going to do very well in life. And nobody will ever be as happy for success as you are. Maybe your mother and father, maybe. He said, so make sure you're humble. Make sure you don't brag. Make sure you don't show off. He goes, and make sure you're helping people. Focus on supporting and helping other people. So he was right. At the time, it sort of went over my head, and I didn't really understand. What's he talking about? Why is he saying that? So he had some great words of. He's also the guy that said to me, "Listen, the difference between having an average life when you're in your, a great life when you're in your 50s, and having an average life," because I was 28 when he told me that, 29, is this much. And I'm like, what? He goes, do this much more in everything you do. That's all you have to do. And he goes, and Chris, I'm telling you, when you're in your 50s, people are going to tell you behind your back, they're going to say how lucky you are. They're going to say, well, is he lucky? They don't realize you did this much more in everything you did.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think people sleep on that. And you mentioned before, like, just also while you're doing that, having some level of humility and being humble and appreciative, like we're talking about. But you also are a competitive person to some extent, I get, just based on the wrestling and things like that. And in your life, Chris, whether it's sports or business or anything, like, how do you balance the competition and the ambition with being humble and appreciative?
Well, it still kills me today. And what I love about our industry, the car industry, is that, nothing's good or bad until compared to something else. And the manufacturers are unbelievable how they show you on a consistent basis. Here's where you stand on unit sales. Here's where you stand compared to the market where you should be. Here's where you stand on your CSI and taking care of customers. Here's where you're on Google reviews, your reviews, where you stand. So it's never ending. So if you're in this automotive industry and you're not competitive and you don't like to be compared, you're in the wrong industry. And I like about this business because I'll look at somebody else and, the mindset always is, wow, wait a second. What are they doing different than we are? Why are they outselling us? It usually comes down to inventory. It comes down to the people and processes. And last is advertising. But a lot of people love to focus on just advertising. But I look at it and say, look, inventory is going to drive traffic. Your people and processes, when they come in the door, are going to make a difference. That's going to drive traffic online. And then, last is once in a while, I find somebody that just has a year. It's like 5% of the dealers have some really unique marketing, but they want to blame everything, their success or failure, on marketing. And that's a smaller part. You got to have the inventory because everybody's online today, and that's going to drive traffic to your internet, and that drive traffic in the door.
Yeah, and also, definitely in your organization, Chris, just because I can tell the type of person you are, is effective leadership. Like, there's a two-way accountability there. Everybody knows what the processes are. Everybody's held accountable to it. And I'm sure that if you were to say that you have a culture of trust, you could tell me exactly the actions that happen inside of your organization that create that culture of trust.
Yes.
You've been somebody that's led three major automotive franchises, Saturn, Ford, and Subaru, and you've been a partner and are a partner in 12 different dealerships. What are some of the biggest leadership lessons that you've learned that could even apply far beyond the automotive industry?
Well, it's people. Our people are our most precious commodity. I mean, that makes the difference of coming into work and having a smile and saying, okay, I can't wait to get there. And that makes the difference. And people forget that. They always want to look at it and say, okay, yeah, but when you get the right people, it literally is like a light switch. Boom, things start to happen. Because then they start making sure we have the right inventory. They start making sure all the processes are in place. They start making sure that they answer the phone, the internet, their videos they send out. All that is done properly. So I would say there's nothing more important than surrounding yourself in your personal and professional life with the right people, and people that are in alignment with your values. They don't have to be exact in your thinking, but in alignment that you feel comfortable challenging each other. Because I find that sometimes when people are in the business too long, they almost are insulted if somebody who's new to the business questions it. But that's how you can learn the most, because they're closest to being a consumer. You're doing this too long, you sometimes forget what it's like to be a sales consultant. You might forget what it's like to be a consumer. So that's where the key learnings are. That's where I find men and women that are older don't want to listen to younger people, or at least open-minded to ideas that they have.
Sure. And, Jay Abraham, again, just bringing him up, he always says like an idea outside of your industry can have an atom bomb effect in
Yeah.
yours. And that can come from not just another industry, but it could come from the people that you're serving. It could come from somebody that's on the outside. Like one of the things that I love, I feel like if you and I had the same exact thinking, like we wouldn't be able to be as successful potentially, because we'd be approaching things the same way. The fact that we do think differently would allow us to then, ego aside, be able to grow personally or professionally. So
Well,
being able to be around those different types of ideas, strategies, and mindsets, I believe, and agree, that definitely allows for that strong team building and company culture. Would you say that was like, that's probably one of your most effective strategies for building teams and effective culture is finding the right people?
When you see behind us, we have, we call it the Kelly Shared Vision, which is our mission statement and our values. And the reason we call it a shared vision is back in 1997, we had close to 500 team members. Every single team member was involved in creating the key words and phrases that were in it. And then they came up with, a bunch of 5 different mission statements and 10 different values. And we all voted on them to put them in there. And we looked at it and said, really, it's not just a mission and values, it's a shared vision. So we called it the shared vision back in 1997. And then we looked at it and said, everything we do from this point on, every sales process should be in alignment with this. And when we don't agree with one another, instead of us, you versus me, it's okay. Let's us look at this. What we're talking about, is it in alignment with this? And I'm not saying that this is perfect, but the times we had to decide to get rid of somebody or part company, it's also we realized, they're really not in alignment with who we are and what we want to be known for as a company. And do we make some mistakes in hiring? Absolutely. Once in a while, you run into some people. And I would say if there's one thing that people would say about me, they might say, you know what? Sometimes he's too trusting of people. And I'm just a believer that when someone tells you something, and I really haven't surrounded myself with a lot of liars or cheats, but once in a while you run into somebody and you go, wow, I can't believe somebody is like that. And my wife has said this to me, and I've had, Mr. Kelly say it to me. That's because you don't think that way, Chris. You can't imagine that anybody would be that bad or lie that much or be that much of a scoundrel to do something like that. And that could be a downside if you really care about people and you want them to do the best. Because if you don't think that way, you can't imagine anybody doing that.
Right. A moment of vulnerability for me too, Chris, is the same thing. Like in ways I've been a people pleaser in my life to at times avoid confrontation in the past. And I'd allow that to be like I just would look past anything that was obvious about who they were at times, because I just wanted to either A, I wanted to build trust with them, or B, I wanted to help. And a lot of times it came from the help standpoint more than anything. And then people on the outside would be like, how do you not see that? It's because I just want to lead with that trust and try to see how we can move forward together. And also I just, like you, very curious on how people tick a lot of time.
I've been very fortunate the last few years. I work with a gentleman by the name of Andrew Schultz, who now runs the Theory of Five University. So if you look at what the Theory of Five University is, Andrew worked with Stephen Covey for years. I'm sure you know Stephen Covey. So
5 Habits, highly effective people.
Yeah. So he worked with Stephen. It was, for many, many years. I think he was the, number 2 or 3 person that was hired in their company. Then he worked for Mitsubishi as one of their lead trainers, and then has a coaching company and approached me, and we approached each other about the Theory of Five. So he started a Theory of Five University, and he taught it in Europe for X amount. That's actually, I went through his class. He did it in Europe where I actually had to fill in the book, working with him as I went through it. And we did this together. And now he runs this Theory of Five University. But what he has really challenged me on is my thinking and, the different personalities that you have, using a disc training and saying, okay, Chris, one of the areas that sometimes you are is you might be too trusting on it. So I believe that you want to have that coach mentor. I don't care what level you think you're at. You want somebody that's comfortable enough to say, and I still talk to him on a weekly basis. He keeps me up to date on what he's doing. He runs it. He's the president of the company. But then he'll update me, and we do our weekly sessions where we talk about, okay, what are we going to do to have that growth mindset? What are you doing personally and professionally to do that? So, and I know some people that they're uncomfortable doing that because they feel like they reached a certain level and they don't want to have somebody challenging them anymore. But I believe that when you don't want to be challenged, that's the beginning of going backwards.
Mhm. Yeah, or you're downslope, or things going in the opposite direction or away from your goals. Would you say or that that's the biggest mistake you might see like young entrepreneurs and business professionals make? Like, not, again, it goes back to the theory of five, not us finding the right types of mentors or coaches that are going to challenge them, or is it something else?
Uh, well, it depends on the individual, but I do find that a lot of people, when they reach a certain level of success, they don't want to listen to anybody else in any way. And I might not want to listen to somebody that had 5 divorces, but I probably can learn something what they did wrong and why they've had 5 divorces. Or I may not want to listen to somebody that's 150 pounds overweight and unhealthy, but I could probably find out what they're doing so that I don't do that to get unhealthy. You can only learn from somebody. You could learn what not to do. In the book, I do talk about something called an anti-mentor. And one of the things when I was interviewing people that I admired most, and I asked them, so why do you think you do the things you're doing and you helped excel? And I'd say 20, 30% of them made a comment of, I had somebody in my life that was so bad as a leader that I promised myself I would never do that. Or I had somebody that was a family member that was so bad at their health, I promised myself I would be healthier. Or they were such a bad parent, I promised I would not do that when I had my children. So you can learn what not to do. And in the book, we label it an anti-mentor. Anti-mentors, you can learn what not to do in every one of the areas of your life. You look at somebody that just has a bad life and go, "Woo, don't fall into that trap. Don't fall into that thinking." So you can learn what not to do just as much. Most of us have worked with somebody that you said, wow, that person is a bad boss, not leader, bad boss. Remember, when you get into that position, do not make somebody feel the way that bad boss did. Remember the good leaders, remember the good behaviors, and remember not to do that, because it's very easy when you're tired and you work a lot of hours to fall into doing something bad or saying something wrong. And sometimes you have to take a breather and you have to walk out of a room because sometimes what you're thinking, is not the right thing. That's why you have to have enough emotional intelligence to say, what I think I want to say is not what's going to help this situation in your personal and professional lives.
Yeah, and there's that emotional, it's emotional awareness and recognition. And somebody that I just interviewed, Errol Dobler of Ice Cold Leader, talks about this in his leadership process, and he literally talks about it from a standpoint of trigger, like what triggered you, what was the emotion that came after that, and then you get the opportunity to think and decide, and then act. And a lot of people, I think, the emotional intelligence where they fall off is they get the trigger, they get the emotion, and then they don't think and decide on how they want to act, and it just kind of blurts out.
Yes. Yeah. And those are the people that everybody's like, whoa, and then then people are uncomfortable talking to them. Then you have somebody that's uncomfortable. You want to be an approachable leader that people are comfortable approaching. Doesn't mean you have to listen to it and agree with what they're going to say, but you have to take into consideration when you hear it more than once, then you might look at it and say, maybe I should consider making this change. Same as a father, same as a mother, same as a friend. You have certain people telling you certain things and you're approachable enough for them to tell you. There's probably something happening. The same with success. Success has a sweet spot. When you have 4 or 5 people telling you something that you admire, and you admire them, and it's the same thing over, that's when you know there's a sweet spot going on. There's something in this. This is the 4th person that I admire that made this comment of what helped their success or supported their success.
Yeah, so maybe I should start paying attention to that and realizing that there's something to that for sure. Chris, as we're rounding out the conversation, I just want to go back to Theory of Five for a second and just ask, for the people that are listening, if someone wants to implement the Theory of Five into their daily life starting right now, like what's the first step that they should be taking?
Well, sort of look at the people you're spending time with and ask yourself, when you leave, do you feel inspired? Do you leave feeling good about it? Or do you feel drained? When that person calls you, are they supporting your growth personally and professional? Or are they draining your growth? Are they leading you in the wrong direction? Or are they leading in a direction that you know is going to support you in your growth? So I think that's the first thing. And then challenging who you're with right now. And then look at the areas of life and say, hey, is there spirituality? Listen, I don't care what religion you are, but I believe that you have to believe there's something greater than yourself out there. And say, am I a spiritual person? Can I grow? Who is better at this than I, and how could I grow with this? Who's the best husband or wife that I know? What can I do to get better? Because that's going to determine a big part of your success. I've seen wonderful people that I thought were going to be super successful marry the wrong man or woman, and their life has been destroyed. I've also seen the opposite, where people I thought were going nowhere, and they got the right spouse, and they turned around their life, and all of a sudden it's like, wow. Now, I've seen people that I thought they were going somewhere, they married the right person too, and it happened. But it's amazing what the right partner could do for you. And then, focus who is better than you in business and finance that you could talk to and challenge you, or, that iron sharpens iron mindset. And then I would also look at your health and fitness. What are you doing there? And if you're a parent, truly understand. I don't believe you can really feel complete if your children are 18, 20, 25, and they can't take care of themselves. If they can't support themselves. Now, the job of a parent is to make sure, this is my belief, is to look at it almost like a baby bird in a nest, that at 18, then if you push them out of that nest, they could survive and thrive on their own. That if you think in your mind, I won't be around once they turn 18, are you setting themselves up for success? Are you baiting them that they can't take care of themselves, that they're going to be coming running to mommy and daddy for everything? So sometimes tough love, but explaining why you're doing it. I'm a believer as a parent that you always explain the why. This is why you do it, because I love you. Even at work, when you're tough on people at work, you let them know. I have an obligation to you and your family once you join our team to make sure you can support yourself, to make sure you can take care of yourself. Once I start caring more about your income and your family than you do, then we're going to have a problem. I think you tell that people that during the interview, but I think it's crucially important that you are always challenging yourself on who you're with in every area of your life. And then I would also say that if you want to learn more about the Theory of Five, you got the theory-of-five.com. There's a growth series on there. I think I priced it at $25 for the year, just because I thought to myself, if you pay nothing, people don't watch it. But if they pay a little bit, they get it. I'm also going to give people a choice. If you write down gift 2025, capital G, and then gift 2025, you can get on and you should be able to get the book for one of these books for free. All you do is pay for the shipping. So I came up with a gift code for this podcast. So you just would go on there and choose one of these. And then you just pay for the shipping. And I'm not sure what shipping is, but I know shipping today compared to 2017 and 18, 19 is much higher than it was. I think it used to be $4.95, and I think it's like $8.95 right now.
Well, on the concept of perceived value, the cost of shipping and handling is in no comparison to the value you will get if you pick up that book and what it could do for your life. It is worth that shipping and handling exponentially if you're willing to apply it and also challenge yourself. Like you had said before, Chris, is like, are you willing to challenge yourself? And like one of the last things I'm curious about is like, how does someone develop more courage, you think, to challenge themselves in these areas and go ahead and, let's say, pick up the theory of five and actually start implementing it?
Well, my question is questions. The question you have to ask yourself, what's the best and what's the worst that can happen if I do this? If I invest in this, what's the best that can happen? And what's the worst that can happen? The worst that can happen is you spend money for shipping or you spend money to buy it. That's the worst that can happen. We probably waste money at doing something that you look at and go, oh yeah, that was a waste. What's the best that can happen? I believe in my heart and soul that if you read the book and did the daily workbook, I believe that it will challenge yourself and you will have tremendous growth in your personal and professional life. But you have to have the courage to really want to improve yourself. If you're saying, I don't want to improve, then the theory of five is not for you. If you're saying, listen, I got one life and I'm going to get the most of this life to have a happy and prosperous life. We got one shot at this. I'm going to become the best version of myself. Then I would say the theory of five is for you.
I love that. Chris, as we're rounding out, what do you hope people learn from your journey and life experience?
I hope that people look at it and say, whatever you believe you can do, you can do. Now, listen, I don't think if I believe at 63 years old, I'm going to be a professional basketball player or football player, but I believe that, if you look at it saying there's certain things in your life, go for it. Put your heart and soul into it. Usually the downside is, not that big. It's not a bad deal. It's not putting your life in danger. But if you want to become, a business person, start your business. If you want to do this, look at it, but study first. Don't go into it without a plan. Put a plan together. Talk to the best people out there, people that have had successes, people that have had failures. Learn what they did wrong, learn what people are doing right, and just put your heart and soul into it and realize it doesn't happen overnight. This is doing this much more daily, weekly, monthly, yearly, and for decades. And all of a sudden, you're going to look back at life and go, wow, I cannot believe I lived this life.
Amen to that, man. It's that long game mentality that you're talking about and just doing the daily things that add up. And thank you so much, Chris. Like, I really appreciate everything that you've shared with me through your book, through this podcast today. Just as we close out, where can people connect with you, get your books, or get in touch? I have the GIFT 2025 code for them to be able to get a book for free.
And that's on the theoryof5.com website. And then Instagram would be Theory of Five. And then same with Facebook. There's a Theory of Five. And then there's a LinkedIn Theory of Five. And I think TikTok, I was going to call it Twitter, but TikTok Theory of Five. And then X, which was Twitter. So every one of the social sites have that.
Cool. I'll be sure to put that in the description below, including the coupon code GIFT 2025. And is there any last things that you want to leave with the Great American Underdog audience, Chris?
Listen, we call it the underdog. You know what? It's not an underdog because you decide if you're going to be an underdog or not based on your behaviors, based on your thinking, based on your actions, and based on the people you surround yourself with. That's going to be the difference. And remember, we got one life, and we won the lottery of life already. You already won that lottery of life. And whenever you're feeling down, remember, there's millions of people looking at you around the world. If they could look at you and look at your life, they would say, I want that life. There's lots of people that want the life you have and the opportunity you have in front of you.
Well, you heard it here, folks. You're less of an underdog than you realize, and you have the life of an opportunity in front of you. And I totally agree with that. Chris, once again, thank you so much for being here on Great American Underdog. This has been another incredible episode where we share stories, real stories of strength and success. If you like this episode and you want to stick around for further content, make sure you subscribe and follow us for more. And thank you again for listening. Take care.
My pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you, Chris.